My name is Mazi Nwonwu. My pen name is Mazi Nwonwu, basically. I'm a writer, a journalist. I have a bias for speculative fiction. So I am also the co-owner, co-founder, co-editor of Omenana. Omenana is a speculative fiction website that is open to entries for African writers, both in Nigeria, Africa, and the African diaspora. So anybody that has any link to Africa can submit stories to Omenana. I'm also the managing editor of Olisa.tv. Olisa.tv is an entertainment website. We call it a blogazine because it's a mixture of, how do I say it now? It's halfway between a blog and a magazine. It was launched in March this year, and it's growing. So on the site, we do a lot of interviews, a lot of essays, the usual contemporary stories like gossip, news, and the rest of them. So that's what I do. My assessment of African literature, I'll say it in two ways. One, African literature has actually moved from the traditional of us having to read books by Achabe, by African Writers series, when all the writers we know are people we meet via their books, hard copy books. It has now shifted to the internet, where a lot of young people are finding it easier to tell their stories and to access an audience for their stories. So you have guys on Facebook who are writing serious stuff and they are posting it on Facebook and they are getting immediate response from audiences. Then you have websites like Omenana, which I mentioned before, like Saraba, Kwani, and the rest of them, which is also giving young writers who perhaps wouldn't have been discovered if not for the internet, giving them platforms for which to showcase their work to the world. So I think African literature has actually changed in the sense that it is more accessible, in the sense that those in the West who usually tend to wait for, what do you call it now, for award season to get to see who the next African writer is. They don't have to wait anymore because now the internet is allowing us to take our stories to them in real time and get responses back in real time too. Okay, so the major reason why we choose to focus on sex and sexuality on the anthology, it wasn't exactly love. Was it because of the fact that in Africa as a whole, people tend to not want to talk about sex in books. Our population is growing, so it shows that sex is happening all the time, everywhere. So people are engaged in sex, people like sex. I know how popular Hint magazine was. Hint magazine, all the stories have sex scenes, and it was very popular with young people. So we felt that this issue of people always talking about African literature and African writers shying away from sex is something that we need to address, because we see writing about sex as also a way of educating people about a kind of, how do I say that, in a way of promoting sex education for the youth and for everybody. So we choose to focus on that because of that very reason, to show that African writers can easily write about sex. So the anthology is a collection of diverse stories, not just on sex itself, but also on sexuality. So you know how difficult Africans get when you want to talk about homosexuality. And people go all about it's not part of our culture, which is actually a lie, because go back 200 years, 2,000 years, people have always been attracted to, there are people who are always attracted to the opposite sex. It's normal, it's the natural stuff. So it's African as much as it's European. So we actually wanted to also tackle that topic. It was, okay, the anthology was, we worked on it between 2012 and 2013. At that time, there was a lot of noise about homosexuality in Africa. Governments passing legislation that say if you marry a man or if you sleep with a man, you get 14 years jail term and all those stuff. So we wanted to address that by telling stories that show that, look, this is actually part of our society and these people are as normal as me and you. So that's why, one of the other reasons why we worked on that anthology. I don't think the Nigerian government is doing enough to support arts and literature. I think they can do more. A few years ago, we had the Bring Back the Book campaign, by former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. It was massive. The way it was organized, the way it was launched, we expected that it's going to actually change the scene. We thought that it would be a way for government to maybe, what word do I use now? A way for government to partner with writers and publishers to get books to the youths who need it more. I started reading as a child. I probably was in my teens when I started reading massively. And that's about the time you can capture anybody who, I'm thinking of a way to say it better. I'll tell a story to say it. I write science fiction. And because I write science fiction, I'm kind of interested in stuff that have to do with science fiction. And a few years ago, I read about the Chinese government inviting a science fiction writer to China. Why? Because they felt the reason China is not innovating. The reason China is not innovating is not because they don't have what word do I use now? I'm searching for a word. The latent skill or the latent talent to innovate. It's just they don't have the, I'm looking for a word now, the catalyst. The Americans have the catalyst, and the catalyst comes from science fiction books that gets used to think about the future, that gets used to think about possibilities. So you have a child that reads a book that talks about somebody moving from here to there in an instant. And the child is interested in science and thinks about, can I develop a machine that can teleport people from here to there? And they start working towards it. And that's how we get our iPad that we use. That's how we got the internet. So science fiction does that. And writing is one way for people to learn. So if the government can encourage youths to read, and the best way you can encourage is to make the books available. So I think what government should do in little word is partner with publishers, give the publishing industry subsidy so that books can be cheaper. If they are cheaper, it will be available to more people, and more people can afford it. So that's one thing the government needs to do. And the government also needs to understand that the very same way the Nigerian scientist that develops a drug that can cure AIDS will bring some of glory to Nigeria. It's that same way that the Chimamanda Adichie, by winning the literary awards across the world, is also going to bring glory to Nigeria. So they need to encourage not just literature, but also music, movies. Okay, Nigeria, for instance, now, what are we known for? Nollywood. The average African meets Nigeria via Nollywood. So if the government pays more attention to Nollywood and is able to encourage maybe find a way to partner with them to improve on the work, the perception of Nigeria will change because they'll see the quality of the work as representative of what Nigeria is. So that's my take on that. Yeah. Thank you very much.